Before there was Elvis, there was a young couple, a cotton patch, a borrowed $180, and a dream so small it was measured in gallons of water and hand-built walls. Their names, Vernon and Gladys Presley. Not legends, not stars, just two people from Tupelo, Mississippi, who loved each other through the Great Depression, built a home with their own hands, and raised a boy who would one day change the world. This is the true story of the parents behind the king, not the fame, not the flash, but the love, struggle, and quiet strength that made Elvis who he was. And if you've ever wondered where Elvis got his soul, this is where it began. It was 1933. The world was in ruins. The Great Depression had crushed dreams, emptied pockets, and left families broken. Banks failed, farms dried up, men walked for miles just to find work. But in Tupelo, Mississippi, a small town of red dirt and humble hearts, a 17-year-old boy named Vernon Presley met a 22-year-old woman named Gladys Love Smith, and something quiet but powerful began. They didn't meet in a grand way. No ballroom, no spotlight, just a small town. Two young hearts and a love that grew in the shadows of hardship. Gladys was quiet, shy, but with a smile that lit up a room. She worked at the Tupelo Garment Center, sitting at a sewing machine for $2 a day. 10 hours, 6 days a week. Her hands were calloused. Her back ached. But she never complained. Vernon was different. Outgoing. Funny. He liked to joke that he'd been raised on a cotton patch. But behind the humor was a man of deep integrity. He took odd jobs, farming, construction, anything to survive. They courted for a few months. Then, with the future uncertain and the world falling apart, they made a decision. They would run away. Not to escape, but to begin. They crossed the county line, took a breath, and lied on their marriage license. Vernon said he was older. Gladys said she was younger. Because that's what you did when you were young, in love and poor. When the rules were the only thing standing between you and a life together, and just like that, they were married. No fanfare, no money, just a promise. After the wedding, they lived with Vernon's parents for a short time. But Vernon had pride and a dream. He didn't want to stay under someone else's roof forever. So he borrowed $180 from a local moneylender named Orville Bean. Bean owned an empty lot next to the Presley family home, and he agreed to lend the money on one condition: the house would be built on his land. With that, Vernon, who had some carpentry skills, rolled up his sleeves. With help from his father and a brother, he built the house himself. No contractors, no power tools. Just sweat, wood, and love. When it was done, it wouldn't have looked like much to the world. No ceiling in the main room, no separate kitchen, an outside toilet, and water. That had to be carried from a communal pump down the road, 2 gallons at a time. But to Gladys, it was everything. She would sit on the porch in the hot summer evenings, fanning herself, waiting for Vernon to come home, and when he did, they would talk, dream, plan. And when she found out she was pregnant, they sat there hand in hand and made plans for their child. They didn't dream of fame, no visions of stadiums or gold records, just a healthy baby, a safe home, a life better than their own. Then, on September 28, 1935, Gladys gave birth to twin boys. One was stillborn. They named him Jesse Garon Presley. The other, a small, crying infant, was Elvis Aaron Presley. And in that moment, everything changed. Gladys had lost a son before she could hold him, and now all her love, all her hopes, all her dreams focused on the one who lived. As Elvis grew, she would often say, "You were my only plan." Because after Jesse, Elvis wasn't just her son, he was her miracle, her purpose, her reason, and she loved him with a fierceness that never faded. She was never far from him. Even when he was a teenager, she'd call him back inside if he wandered too far. She sewed his clothes, cooked his meals, prayed over his bed every night. And Elvis? He adored her. He would later say, "She never let me out of her sight. Even when I was a grown man, she'd look at me like I might disappear." And maybe she feared it, because she had already lost one child. She wouldn't lose another. When Elvis left for the army in 1958, Gladys fell apart. She didn't eat. She barely slept. She'd sit by the phone, waiting for his call, and when he returned, she ran to him like he was still 5 years old. She died in 1958, just months after he came home, and Elvis never recovered. He said, "When Mama died, my world went black." He visited her grave every day, left flowers, talked to her, and for Dieu, the rest of his life, he kept her room at Graceland exactly as it was. Because to Elvis, she wasn't just his mother, she was his heart. Now let's talk about Vernon. He was quiet, reserved, not a man of speeches or grand gestures, but his strength was in his silence. He worked hard, provided, protected, and when Elvis began to rise in fame, Vernon became his manager, not out of ambition, but out of protection. He wanted to shield his son from the world that had once crushed them. He wasn't perfect. Some say he let Colonel Tom Parker take too much control. But Vernon was a Depression-era man. He trusted authority, he believed in loyalty, and he did what he thought was best for his boy. When Elvis died in 1977, Vernon was 72. He buried his son, then said, "I buried my reason for living." He died just 2 years later, but until the end, he spoke of Gladys and Elvis with reverence, not as legends, but as family. But to truly understand this story, we have to go deeper. Let's talk about Gladys's faith. She was deeply religious, a member of the Assembly of God, and she passed that faith to Elvis. He grew up singing in church, listening to gospel quartets, and when he recorded "How Great Thou Art," he said, "That's for Mama." She taught him to pray, to be kind, to care about the poor, and when he gave away cars, houses, and money to strangers, people said he was eccentric. But those who knew him said he was just being like his mother. She once gave her last dollar to a hungry man. And when Elvis did the same, he was just following her example. And Vernon, he taught Elvis dignity. He taught him to work hard, to keep his word, to respect women, to never forget where he came from. When Elvis bought Graceland, Vernon didn't care about the mansion. He cared that his son had a safe place, and when Elvis wore flashy jumpsuits, Vernon would say, "Son, you don't need all that. Just be yourself." Simple words. But they stayed with Elvis. In his darkest years, when he was lost in fame and pills, he would say, "I wish Mama and Daddy could see me now." Not with pride, with shame, because he knew he wasn't living up to their example. Now think about that house. The one with no ceiling, no indoor plumbing, where Gladys carried water in a 2-gallon tank. It still stands at 306 Elvis Presley Drive, Tupelo, restored, preserved. A museum now. But if you stand on that porch, you can still feel it. The love, the hope, the quiet courage of 2 young people who dared to build a life, not with money, but with faith, labor, and devotion. And in that house, a legend was born, not because of fame, not because of talent, but because of a mother's love and a father's strength. Because Elvis didn't just inherit a voice, he inherited Gladys's tenderness and Vernon's resilience. He carried their struggle in his music, their humility in his smile, their love in every ballad he ever sang. When he sang, "Are You Lonesome Tonight?" he was singing for Gladys. When he sang, "Walk a Mile in My Shoes," he was singing for Vernon, because the man who moved the world was shaped in a house with no ceiling, by parents who loved him under an open sky. So the next time you hear Elvis's voice, Don't just hear the king. Hear the boy from Tupelo, the son of a seamstress and a carpenter, the child of a dream built on $180 and a promise. Because greatness doesn't always come from palaces. Sometimes it grows from a cotton patch, from a porch in Mississippi, from a mother who said, "You were my only plan," and from a father who built a home so his son could build a legacy. If this story moved you, like, share, and subscribe, because legends aren't born in spotlights. They're raised in quiet homes, by parents who loved them more than fame. And in the comments, tell me, do you know your family's origin story? And what would your parents say was their only plan? Until next time, this is your channel name, telling the stories behind the icons, one truth at a time. If you're still here, thank you, not just for watching, but for feeling, because this next part was never meant for the world. No headlines, no algorithms, no views. It's for you, the ones who stayed, the ones who care, the ones who understand that the greatest stories are the quiet ones, the ones passed down like heirlooms, the ones whispered on porches in the dark. And this story, it's about a moment most people don't know, a moment Elvis never spoke of in public, but one that reveals everything about who he really was. In 1976, just 1 year before he died, Elvis was alone at Graceland. Late at night, rain falling softly. The house was quiet. The Memphis Mafia had gone home. Lisa Marie was asleep. He walked out to the jungle room, sat in his favorite chair, turned off the lights, and played an old cassette. Not a hit, not a concert recording. It was a home recording, made in 1953, just months before Gladys died. On it you can hear a crackling tape, a screen door creaking, crickets in the night, and then voices. Gladys and Vernon, sitting on that small porch in Tupelo, laughing, talking, planning. Gladys says, "One day our boy's gonna do something big. I can feel it." Vernon laughs. "As long as he's happy, that's all I care about." And then, faintly, a young Elvis, maybe 18, walks out and says, "I'm gonna sing, Daddy, all over the world." Vernon, "Then you better sing true, son. That's all that matters." The tape ends. Silence. And in that room in 1976, Elvis sat in the dark and wept. His bodyguard, Red West, later said, "I walked in and found him holding that tape like it was a lifeline. He didn't say a word, just looked at me and whispered, 'That's all I ever wanted, to make them proud.'" Now, here's what makes this moment even more powerful. That same night, Elvis went to Gladys's room, still untouched, her Bible on the nightstand, her perfume on the dresser. He sat on her bed, closed his eyes, and said, out loud, like she was there, "Mama, I did it. I sang all over the world, but I miss you every day, and I'm sorry I couldn't be the son you wanted in the end." Then he added, "But I never forgot where I came from. I still carry that house in my heart, that porch, that love." And for the first time in years, he smiled. But there's one more layer. In 2003, Lisa Marie was going through old storage at Graceland. She found a small, weathered notebook. Inside, in Elvis's handwriting, were daily entries he wrote, in the months after Gladys died. One read, August 15th, 1958, Mama's birthday. I bought a white rose. Put it on her grave. Talked to her for an hour. Told her about the new song. Told her I tried to be good. I hope she heard me. Another, December 24th, Christmas Eve. I sat on the porch at Graceland, looked up at the stars, just like we used to. I said, "Mama, are you watching?" And for a second, the wind stopped, and I knew she was. And the last entry, dated August 15, 1977, the night before he died. "I'm tired, but I'm ready to see her. Tell Daddy I kept his word. I sang true." So if you've made it this far, you've just heard something no one else knows. Not because it was hidden, but because it was too sacred to tell. This wasn't about fame. It wasn't about music. It was about a son who never stopped loving his parents, who carried a $2-a-day seamstress and a carpenter-turned-father in his heart every time he stepped on stage. And now, you carry that truth with you. So the next time you hear "How Great Thou Art," don't just hear a song, hear a prayer, a son talking to his mother, a boy from Tupelo remembering the porch light that never went out, because the king of rock wasn't built on fame. He was built on love, on humility, on a house with no ceiling, but a sky full of dreams. To everyone who stayed until the end, you're not just a viewer, you're a keeper of memory, and for that, thank you. If this moved you, share this video quietly, not for views, but so someone who's lost a parent might feel less alone. And in the comments, tell me, what's one thing your parents said that you've never forgotten? And do you think love like Vernon and Gladys's still exists today? Until next time, this is your channel name, Telling the Stories. No one else dares to finish.